Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of our program. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we have with us Scott McKain, and he is a globally recognized authority on how organizations and professionals create distinction to attract and retain customers, and he is the founder of the Distinctive Institute. So welcome to the program, Scott.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be with you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, so I always love when we have words we can go deep into, like focus. And it's really interesting how when you can pick a word and go, you know what, have you ever thought of it this way or thought of it that way? And so I like the word distinction, and you've got that in your, Distinctive Institute. So what is it about distinction that you latched onto so long ago and now have made that a kind of a forefront of your, service offerings?
Yeah, that's kind of how we founded the Distinction Institute, and all that was just based on exploring that word. And really, Mike, what it is that I was doing a lot of speaking on customer service, and it's been a lot of time, working with all different types of organizations all over the world on what it would take to improve their level of service and create a better experience for customers. And I realized that some of them were doing a great job, but yet weren't standing out in the marketplace. And so I started studying differentiation. How do you differentiate yourself from others in your industry? And through that research, I had the realization that it's not enough to be different. I can slap every customer in the face, and that would make me different from my competition. But nobody's going to come do business with me a second time, right? And so as I looked, I found that there were three levels that you could typically group most organizations within any industry. You could group them in. One is sameness, and that is where I can't tell the difference between one and another. For example, if we're going to buy a laptop computer, why would you buy an Acer over an Asus? Mm-hmm. I don't know, right? They both, and it's not a commentary on the quality of the product or the service. It's just that I can't tell a difference. So that would be sameness. Then you'd find others that had differentiated themselves in the marketplace, either something about their service or something about the product that set them apart from the competition. But I realized there was a higher level, and that highest level is truly distinction. It's where what you do is so compelling and it's executed so perfectly that you attract customers in the marketplace simply as a result of who you are. And, the more I studied it, the more I found, Mike, that the customers that you attract tend to be so much more loyal and so much more of your advocates in the marketplace than the customers that you've had to pursue. And attracting customers becomes the primary objective, it seems to me, of any business. And distinction is the primary thing that will attract them to do business with you.
You said a lot there, and we could probably pause right there and talk for 19 hours. But I will pull out two things that I thought about. Number one, the one and only Seth Godin, who talks about tribes. So you wrap your arms around your tribe and you give them everything and whatever they want and what they say. You craft your offerings, and you're going so deep on that tribe, and that helps you become that value to them. Secondly, have you read Fascinate by Sally Hogshead?
Yeah, I've known Sally for years. You bet. Absolutely.
So, her saying, it brought to my mind when you said that, different is better than better.
Yeah, and Sally and I have an honest disagreement about that. I don't think
good.
And I don't think that anything is better than better. Just being different does not make you better, in my opinion. And I think that's one of the wonderful things is that we can respectfully disagree, and the real beneficiary are people who think about this and make their own decisions, regardless of which point they choose. I see organizations that are different that just aren't making it in the marketplace today because they can't prove how they are superior. So those organizations that are distinctive have found a way. If you're distinctive, by definition, there's something superior about you. If you're different, it doesn't mean that what you're doing that is different. I mean, New Coke was different, but that didn't mean it was better.
Yeah, you could be weird.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've listened to a lot of music in my lifetime, and I've listened to some music that's really, really different. I've seen some movies that are really, really different, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I perceive them to be better.
Wouldn't you agree that that statement, which I love when you can look at one view and then look at it from another view and go, yeah, that's pretty good. But that statement makes me think of the same parallel as practice makes perfect. Well, guess what? We grew up thinking that. But that's wrong, too, because it's really perfect practice makes perfect, because if you practice the wrong way, you get perfect at being wrong.
Dennis Waitley said many years ago that practice makes permanent.
There you go. I love that.
I've always loved that line because, I can get out and I can practice the wrong golf swing, and it doesn't mean I'm going to get a perfect golf swing. It means I've ingrained my faults. And you're exactly right, Mike. I mean, it's finding what makes you superior in the marketplace and doing it over and over and over that's really going to make a compelling difference.
And over and over in the right way, because I think it was Jack Welch that said, if you don't have a competitive advantage, don't compete. So, don't be same as, don't be me too. What is it that does set yourself apart? And too many times when I consult with clients and I say, let's talk about competitive advantage. Oh, well, we have good customer service and low prices. We've been around for 19 years. And I'm like, that's what your 19 competitors just told me. What makes you different? And then when you dig deep down, it's like, now wait a minute, you didn't tell me that you have a proprietary process why wasn't that the first thing that you said? So now let's focus on, and I think that's so huge. And that brings me up to another example, which is I listened to your interview with Bob Berg the other day, and you gave an example about a hotel. Recount that, and let's draw some lessons from that example.
I appreciate that, Mike. Bob is the best. He is a wonderful guy, and he saw a story that I posted online. I was the keynote speaker for Fairmont Hotels and for all the general managers of Fairmont properties around the world. And after the speech, I'm hanging out chatting with everybody, and this guy introduces himself, and he's the general manager of the Fairmont in Washington, D.C. And I said, wow, what a coincidence. I'm staying and speaking at your hotel. I'm checking in on Sunday. And he said, well, that's really interesting, because I talked about creating distinction. We own the federally registered trademark on the term the ultimate customer experience. I talk about the importance of the customer experience. And I tell the story about this cab driver named Taxi Terry who says, are you ready for the best cab ride of your life, and deliver that for me. So this general manager had just sat through that presentation. So I get off the plane in Washington, and there's a guy standing there with a sign that says Fairmont Scott McKain. And I went, wow, that's really cool. He said, I didn't expect to be picked up. And he said, well, we wanted to pick you up and bring you to the hotel. So I get in the car, and there's music playing from a country music band called Diamond Rio, and all those guys are really good pals of mine, some of my best friends. And I went, oh, that's so cool, because I know these guys. And the driver said, yeah, we know that. We looked at your Facebook post, and so we wanted to create music for the ride to the hotel that would really make you feel great. So they sent a limo. I get in the limo, and the music that's playing are from friends of mine. I arrive, and there's 3 people standing there to welcome me. And as I get out of the car, they said, are you ready for the best hotel stay of your life?
Boy, they're setting themselves up for a lot, huh?
Oh, but they delivered. That's the thing, Mike. So I take the elevator up, and they have a welcoming drink for me, and it is a drink that was created there at the hotel back, decades ago, that the hotel is known for. And so then they take me to this room, and the room is fantastic. It's beautiful. But the main part of the room was the guy had taken my speech and had gone on my website and looked into my books, and he had taken major points from the books and from the speech, and he crafted, the hotel staff had crafted a little display in every single part of the room. For example, in one little part of the room, they had a toy taxi cab. And the line from the Taxi Terry story, are you ready for the best taxi ride of your life? In another, there were the 3 levels of customer engagement that I talk about, and something representing that. As I go through the room and I find these little things, I felt like I was almost hunting for Easter eggs. It was absolutely so compelling and so different from anything I'd ever experienced in my life. And I turn around, and there on the bed, the logo of our company is stitched, embroidered into the pillowcases. It was so amazing, so unbelievable. It truly was the best hotel stay of my life. Now, a couple things I didn't mention when I was talking with Bob that I thought were also incredibly important were these 2 things. Number one is that he said, naturally, we can't do this every time for every guest. But he said, what we're trying to do is to identify who our repeat customers are, who are our most, and to look at every single aspect. Because one of the things I talk about creating distinction is that very few organizations craft out every moment of what would be the ultimate experience for customers. We would never shoot a movie and hire the actors and rent the lights and the sound and build the sets and then say, hey, what are we going to say? What's this movie about? Right? I mean, the script would be in place first. Yet in business, we do exactly the opposite. We build our product or we form our service and we do all this work and then we go, oh, wait, now how do we take care of customers?
Ready, fire, aim.
Right, exactly. And so that's part of what the hotel's doing. Here's the second part that really knocked me out, too. All the general manager said to his team was, I heard this guy speak at the meeting in Mexico. I want to give him the best hotel stay ever. Here's his book. Here's the video of the speech. You create it.
Okay, so here's a question. How long between that statement and your visit?
3 days.
Okay, so first of all, your whole recounting of that experience was spectacular and stellar, right?
Thank you.
But 3 days makes it just like drop the mic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it wasn't that he had a month to prepare.
Right.
Hey, this guy hears me speak on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, stitching on what?
Thursday morning and says, this guy is coming on Sunday. I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. And one of the things I loved about what he did was when I'm singing his praises, you have literally, I stay in hotels 120, 130 nights a year and have for 2 decades. And out of almost 3,000 hotel stays, this is the best. Yeah. He said, you need to tell my staff that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, but I want to make sure it's my team you should be celebrating because they're the ones who executed on this.
Okay, so here's an observation, too. You know how Bob Berg, the go-giver and the giving for the sake of giving and the value, right? Guess what that guy did not do to you? He didn't say, dude, hook me up on social media and tweet out our hotel. And he said, take care of my staff. Make sure that they know. That was a secret, silent, nobody had to know everything you're saying. He just wanted his staff to know, boom, you done good. And that's a gold star times 100.
Oh, absolutely, Mike. And isn't it interesting, the fact that he didn't stand there and say, hey, you're going to tweet about this?
Yep.
Hey, you're going to post this on Facebook? The fact that he didn't say that moved me more to do so.
Yep.
Right.
And, here's another thing when you were mentioning that, like how many guests do they have in their properties all across the world? Can they do that 100% of the time? Good gracious, no. But they probably, if you really overlaid the Pareto principle of 80-20, they're probably looking at some of the, like you said, the frequent stay, the influencers, the people that would be really, really relevant to really going deep with. And that's where they're focusing that into. And I think that's a huge piece to keep in mind because people listening to this could think in their business, how could I make my, customer service experience or my client journey be so spectacular? Every single time, good night, there's got to be a stop, but you focus on the ones that have the potential to be so much more meaningful.
Oh, you're exactly right. And to piggyback on that, one of the cool things that's happened since then is hearing from other GMs at Fairmont Hotels who are now saying, oh, that gave me such a great idea to do that, for this guest, right? And so it's modeling the behavior that you want to inspire throughout the organization. And
of course, the other managers and GMs are cursing him, going, man, alive, that bar set so high.
Yeah, exactly. But Fairmont is thinking, isn't this the greatest thing in the world, right? Because we are setting the bar high for other general managers. And that's the other thing within any business, within any organization, and we overlook it in companies small and large, is that celebrating our heroes, right? If we want to be distinctive, then pick out something distinctive that somebody in our organization does and make sure that everybody knows about it. And that's one of the things that Fairmont has executed here to perfection, is that they will tell everybody within the organization, hey, here's what happened. Here's how we help someone. And I've become a big fan of theirs, obviously, because of that. Now, I give speeches to a lot of organizations, and I don't mean to sound like I'm, shilling for a client here. It's that this is one that absolutely knocked it out of the park, and it's thrilling for me to see how that is filtering throughout their entire organization.
Exactly. Just this week I interviewed Mark Sanborn, author of Fred Factor and so many more. And his book, Fred Factor, is so similar to Taxi Terry, right? Do you know the story of Fred Factor, the post office? Postal worker?
The first time I met Mark, I was a college student speaking at a high school assembly, and he was on the front row as a high school senior. So yes, I've known Mark for a year or two.
So the interesting thing with the two comparisons, Fred Factor, Taxi Terry, is we can model those two, and we can give value and make that experience so spectacular. And it has to be done very, very carefully, because on the postal worker Fred Factor side, the people on his route, what is he trying to get out of them? Nothing, right? Yeah. He's not a salesman trying to make the sale, and they're kind of looking at you sideways going, all right, when's the shoe going to drop and going to sell me something? It's not. He's just being good. Taxi Terry, okay, you might come into town once every other third, fourth year, so she's not shilling to get 19 taxi rides from you. She's just doing a good job, and because for the sake of doing that. So my question is, how do you implement that journey, that experience, without coming off A, creepy, or B, needy?
It's based on what the customer, what will help the customer.
Yeah.
So my point here is, for example, Taxi Terry, one of the things that struck me about the ride was that he had a iPhone in his dash. Had an attachment on his dash with an iPhone with the screen, magnifying glass over the screen. And so when I got in, he said, hey, let's check out the weather. And he touches it, and it's set to weather.com for Jacksonville. And now I have the forecast for several days of my stay. Well, the more I got to know him and the more I asked him about, okay, so now what is, why did you do that? Because I'm just here one night. I'm here. He said, well, think about it. I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. The PGA headquarters is just a few miles south. Many of the people I'm picking up at the airport are people who are here for golf vacations. And so the weather is really important. So by putting the weather up, it begins a conversation that I can have with them. And many times, if the weather is great, I can say, hey, how you getting to the course? And so it helps the customer in a way that you don't, I don't depend on taxi drivers for meteorological information, right? But the fact that he delivered something unexpected of help and of service made it a more compelling ride.
Right. And how can you, as a business, you need to think of the obvious ways and then the not so obvious ways.
Right. In other words, what questions are my customers asking? What are things that would help them, regardless of how? See, so many times we want to go, okay, let's do this because if we do this, then they'll buy something.
Yep.
For example, I posted a blog post here in the last few days about one of the things happening here in Las Vegas, which is now they are charging for valet parking, and now they are starting to have, for example, MGM is experimenting with you don't get free drinks anymore. After you play the video poker machine for so long, it'll spit out a coupon that will get you a drink. Now, this is what happens when organizations then try to silo every part of their business. Okay, parking is a separate business. How do we monetize that, right? Yep. Let's look at these poker machines. Those free drinks we're bringing, how do we monetize that? And it brings about two important things, Mike. First of all, when you separate your business into silos, it becomes increasingly difficult to deliver a congruent experience for your customers.
Yeah.
You have to be able to create. I don't say, "Oh, what a great parking experience!" Right? I go, "Man, I had a great experience at MGM."
Yeah.
If I go to Morton's to get a steak and the valet bashes the door of my car, I don't care how good the filet is.
Yep.
I've had a bad experience at Morton's. And so what we see organizations doing is building these silos and then making each one a profit center, not thinking about the total experience for the customer is feeling like you've been nickel and dimed. I wrote one business one time and I said, can you give me any example? Just give me one example where a business improved their bottom line by discontinuing activities that customers had grown to expect. And they couldn't think
Crickets.
of one, and I can't either. Right?
Yep.
Crickets, exactly. and I see this happening, though, with so many organizations where, as we look at making more money, which we're all trying to do, but how do you create more distinction in the marketplace? How do you build advocates for your business if you're announcing, like United did, that they're going to have a new class of service where they're going to charge you for carry-on luggage?
Yeah. That's a super good point, because at some point you're trying to monetize and maximize, and that's a good corporate philosophy. But then when that mindset is perceived by your audience and they leave you in droves, then what have you maximized?
Exactly, Mike. The most underestimated aspect of business finance is the value of a loyal customer.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot create a loyal customer without creating a distinctive experience that they desire to repeat.
And at what point, what do you recommend, where is there a line where it's just enough is enough, and then one more it's like way overboard, like hey, having a little bit of honey tastes good, but man, 4 spoonfuls and I'm getting sick. Right, exactly. And that's you make the great point. I mean, that's part of what we have to do, is to be able to walk through the experience. For example, if we were making a movie, we would build storyboards before the movie, and we would try to walk through with the storyboards and visually try to anticipate, not only in terms of, I've got to build this for the set for this scene, but think about from an emotional standpoint. What's the audience going to be feeling as we go through this process to try to create this experience for our audience? I think businesses need to do the same thing. Rather than saying, okay, now here's valet parking, let's charge there and make some more money, and then have another senior vice president of video poker machines saying, let's monetize this. Someone, and I think in many organizations, it really needs to be the chief executive officer, needs to look at the entire breadth of the experience. But, small businesses need to do this as well. I grew up in a grocery store. My mom and dad owned the one small grocery store in Crothersville, Indiana, where I grew up. And one of the things that Dad always focused on is, from the moment you pull into our parking lot to the moment you drive out with the groceries in the back, what is the experience? And a big chain store came into our community, and a few years later they closed their doors and left because they could charge less for their groceries, but they couldn't match the customer experience. That's huge, and like the old saying, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care, and that ties right into relationships and giving value and the experience. Because was it Maya Angelou that said people will forget what you said to them, but they will never forget how you made them feel, and that kind of goes right into experience.
Boy, that's a great quote. I love that, and you're exactly right. They'll never forget how you make them feel. But yet we in business so often don't want to use the word emotion, or we don't want to talk about the experience because that doesn't fit neatly into what we're trying to digitize or systematize or Six Sigma-ize or whatever it might be. And that's part of the problem. The other aspect is, if we look from a cultural perspective, my dad learned his ABCs from a teacher standing over him with a ruler, smacking him on the knuckles, saying, do it again, do it again, do it again. For the last 40 years, young people have learned their alphabet by watching Big Bird and Bert and Ernie. In other words, from the time that we start, now we are entertained and we have an experience as we are educated. Therefore, we have trained our customers and trained the workforce to expect an experience as they do business. And if we're not delivering that, why wouldn't you go to Amazon and order it? Why wouldn't you go someplace else where it's going?
And guess what? That mindset may be perfectly true and wonderful back in the day, but it's 10 times more accurate today because of one thing: digital/technology. Because if we don't do well by them, guess what they do? Click, Google, I'm out of here. I found your replacement. Goodbye.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that, particularly as we talk with entrepreneurs and smaller businesses, we never imagined that our competition might be a world away. You always, for a grocery store, for example, my mom and dad, who else was selling Tide detergent? Well, it was that chain store that had moved in on the other side of town. It wasn't that they could click and it was going to be delivered and FedEx was going to put it on your doorstep 2 days later because you're an Amazon Prime member, right? And so if you don't create a distinctive experience that's compelling enough to make people go, yeah, I am going to go down there to buy my groceries because there's something else there I might need, and gosh, it's a great experience to do business there, and they make me feel good when I'm there and feel like a valued customer. If you're not doing that, what hope do you have?
Yeah, why bother?
Why bother? Right.
Well, as you can probably tell by the vibe of our conversation, we could go on and on and on, which is a good thing. Yay. But let's wrap up with what's the best way that people can learn more about you, your books, your programs, and read some more of your thought leadership, and let's point them in that direction. Then we'll call it a day and circle back around and do it again one day.
I look forward to that, Mike. I appreciate you asking. My website for speaking and things like that is scottmckain.com. It's spelled McKain, by the way. Distinction Institute is our online virtual program that teaches and trains how to be more distinctive and how to deliver the ultimate customer experience. My podcast is called Project Distinct, and it's just a daily 5 to 10 minute idea of what you can do to create distinction in the marketplace. So any of those places works out great, and I'm honored and thrilled that you'd have me on. I appreciate our time together, Mike.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Scott. It's wonderful to brainstorm and mastermind with one of the elite out there. So thank you so much for your time, and we'll hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thanks.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.